Okay, a couple things. First of all, like to start by council, like to introduce you to our St. George royalty. Would you come up? That would be great. Yeah, come up to the podium there. So we have, and this was from the pageant in April, right? Wow, it's been a while ago, but it feels like yesterday. The princess, as I said, is Emily Theobald, and the first attendant is Dakota?
Yeah.
Yeah. You said Coda earlier. That's you. Yeah, you shortened it, didn't you? Dakota Stevens, and second attendant is Madison Baldwin. They're right there. And Miss Congeniality, tell me your name again.
Mandy Rogers.
Mandy Rogers, that's right. I'll tell you what, council, we'll make sure we do a better job of letting you know when this event is. But it was really cool to see the incredible talents of these four young women and the others that were a part of this, what do we call it? Scholarship pageant, right? We've got to call it by the right name. They are beautiful, but they're incredibly talented and smart, and it was just really amazing to be there. So we're excited to have you here. We're excited, council, we're going to have them probably more heavily involved. We'll tie them into the youth council a little bit, and we'll have them at our parades and at our ribbon cuttings. And we have a few of those coming up before the end of the year. And we'll probably have them involved at Switch Point. They've expressed an interest in helping out there. And at the Children's Museum, Betty suggested a few minutes ago. So there are just all kinds of things that we hope that you'll be able to enjoy during your reign, right? And they also are sporting on their sashes a St. George City pin and the little pin key to the city as well. So I've assured him that will open every door in the city. Now, mine hasn't done that, so we might have to compare notes. So anything you'd like to say, Emily, or any of you, I'd love to have you, if you want, just introduce yourself quickly and tell us, you got to tell us what your talent was at the pageant. Would you do that? Yeah. Okay. And tell us what school you go to.
Okay. I'm Emily Theobald. I'm 14 years old, and my birthday is in 2 days. And I go to Desert Hills Middle School, well, high school now, and I danced in the pageant, but I also love to sing. That's about it.
Excellent. So you're going to the same school my daughter's going to, same grade and everything, so watch for my little Mary. Okay. Go ahead, Coda.
I'm Dakota Stevens, first attendant, and I did the piano in the pageant. I'm 16 years old, and I go to Desert Hills High School.
Thank you.
I'm Madison Baldwin. I'm 15 years old. I go to Desert Hills High School, and I dance in the pageant, but I also enjoy cheering and tumbling.
Very good.
I'm Mandy Rogers, and I sang in the pageant, and I am 15 years old, and I go to Snow Canyon High School.
There we go. We're a little heavy on Desert Hills there, aren't we, Gil? But we do have Snow Canyon represented, so that's good too. And there was some pretty good representation from the other schools as well. It's a pretty young group, but they are very talented, let me assure you. I was not envious of the judges that night, but they did choose wisely. So, well, anything else you'd like to tell us or the audience today?
Yeah, we're really excited to be working with the city. We're thankful that we get to represent it, and we love St. George.
Okay. Well, thank you, and we will see you at least in a month. All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate you. We also appreciate the directors of the pageant. Remind me of her name that just left. Joy? And Christina, who had to leave. But thank you for your help. It was done so well. So thank you. Okay. Let's see. A couple things I'd like to mention before we get to our written agenda. First of all, there will not be a meeting, council, next week. I think you all are aware. June 11th would be a regular work meeting, and we've canceled that. I've got to be up to the summer games for their kickoff, and Betty's got another assignment, and I don't know about the rest of you, but we decided we would cancel that meeting, and so enjoy your time. And let's see, the following week we will have a regular meeting here on the 18th. Want to mention, and Michelle, you're fully aware of this, but this morning at about 6 a.m., the Veterans Honor Flight departed on 2 buses provided by Dixie State University from the Dixie Center for Washington, D.C. I think around 100 people. I think around 40 were veterans. I met at least 10 90-plus-year-olds, including several women. It was just incredible. They met at 5 this morning. They were all there early, as you might expect. The Patriot Guard riders were there to escort them all the way to McCarran Airport. And I joined them for the first 10 miles and bailed. But it was really something else. So just for the public, as well as for the council, they anticipate returning home. It's a quick trip, but they anticipate returning home Saturday night, somewhere between probably 8 and 9 p.m. Saturday night at the Dixie Center. Anyone is welcome. It'll be a sight, I can tell you. We've all been to one of these before. It'll be very emotional, and love to have people come if they can, and just congratulate them and welcome them home. So, any questions on
Mayor,
that?
it's not a question, but it's just come to my knowledge that a lot of our female WAC, the Women's Army Corps, did not fall under the benefits that male
That's right.
veterans receive. And it's amazing that we're still working on that, but we had the most lovely lady who had served so valiantly and was, in need of her benefits, but they just were not given. A letter was sent instead. Just amazing.
Nice, huh?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Just something to think about. I think there were about 100,000 women. Very few died, but they served on hospital ships in the Pacific and other horrific places in the European theater, and gave a tremendous amount of service.
Yeah.
So,
Hope someday we can correct that.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. And I'm glad that there were at least a few such veterans from World War II and other wars as a part of this flight this time. So Jenny Barnett really is kind of the ringleader, I think. And who's the gentleman, Michelle? I can't remember his name, but I didn't see him there this morning, so Jenny may be heading this one up. But incredible volunteers. There will be coverage through the Spectrum as David, is it called Mark? Is Mark here? Caldera, I think is his name. He's there embedded with them, and also it'll be covered on KSL, I believe, during the next couple days. Okay, wanted to also mention just 2 other quick events. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. we'll be kicking off, along with the sponsors and organizers, the George Street Fest. Again, 6 p.m. tomorrow night downtown. It'll be between Main Street and Tabernacle, or excuse me, between the Boulevard and Tabernacle on Main Street, and also it will cross over into the rest of the Arts District up Ancestor Square and our arts museums and galleries. Fun for the whole family, and just a great opportunity to be downtown and enjoy the different booths. And there will be prizes and drawings and fun and dancing, just so you know. And I'm sure that if the city council's there, they'll be dancing. I know Betty will. Betty's a dancer, and she can maybe show us how it's done.
Get it done with.
So that is tomorrow night, and it will be the first Friday of every month the rest of the year. And we're proud to be sponsors of that. It's not, we haven't organized it, but we're proud to help and sponsor that. Also, one last thing, would like to mention that next Saturday, so the 13th of June, while the firefighters from across the state are in town for their annual convention, there will be what's called the Fire Hose Frenzy Fun Run. It's a 5K. You can register online at getmeregistered.com, or you can show up Saturday morning, the 13th, up at the Ridgetop Complex, the old airport, and at 7 a.m., and you can register there if you want. You just may not be able to get a t-shirt if you wait that long. But again, June 13th, Saturday at 7 a.m., and this goes to benefit, 100% goes to benefit fire burn victims. And if they are desirous, they can use these funds to go to what's called the Utah Burn Camp, operated through the Utah Burn Center. So just wanted to pass that along and encourage people to go participate in that and help those burn victims. I lied. There's one last thing, and that is, Council, you might remember that a year ago we heard a little bit about this same thing, but there was a press release issued today that the American Academy for Park and Recreation Administration, in partnership with the National Recreation and Park Association, is pleased to announce that the City of St. George Leisure Services Department is a finalist for the 2015 National Gold Medal Awards for Excellence in Park and Recreation Management. And this is their 50th anniversary. They will announce the winners of this when they have their conference, which is let's see, I think it's in September in Las Vegas. Correct, Kent? And so we are excited to be, for the second year in a row, which Kent has told me is as far as we know unprecedented, to be up for this award. And so we will make sure that we have a few people go down there and represent the city. And again, I think it speaks well of our, our great recreation and leisure offerings here in the city of St. George. And Kent, please pass our congratulations on to all of your people, will you? We appreciate their efforts and the vision that you and Gary and previous councils and mayors have had over the past, say, 30, 40 years that have gotten us to this point. Okay, is that enough, council? Probably better. Anything else that I've forgotten that we should be bringing up? All right. Well, then let's go now to our first item on the agenda, Gary, unless we have something else.
I just wanted to mention that the bid opening item 3 or 2B,
Or not
we've had
to
some
be.
issues regarding the notice requirements and some of the specs, the way they were done. So we're going to restart that process again and either rebid it, renotice it, and tighten the specs up so there's no questions about any discrepancies in the bid. So
2B is not to be.
2B is not to be this week. I'm sorry, 2A.
2A
Sorry,
is not
2A.
to be. All right.
2A.
All right. Gil, was that good enough? All right. Okay, then we will start with comments from the public. This is our first Thursday regular meeting. I have one person who's filled out a comment form. Is there anyone else who wanted to? Okay, if you'd bring that to the recorder, she'll give that to us. Just as a quick review, to participate in this portion, you need to be a resident of the city of St. George. You'll be given approximately 3 minutes, could be a little more, a little less, depending on numbers. And of course, both of us, both sides, we want to make sure we show courtesy and respect. And the issue can't be an item that's pending on this agenda or likely in a near agenda, just because we want to make sure that both sides of an issue could be present. generally speaking, we're able to allow almost every issue that wants to be discussed. So first of all, Stephen Palmer, who I know is a resident of the city of St. George, if you'd come forward, and he wants to talk about Airbnb, a short-term vacation rental code.
Hi,
Hi, Stephen.
how are you?
Great.
First of all, I want to thank you all for your service to the community. I know that what you guys do is often a thankless job. I know you guys get caught in the crosshairs of a lot of criticism, and everybody has different opinions on how everything should be run. And I know you do your best to balance the interests of everybody in the community, and it's not easy. And so I appreciate your willingness to put yourselves out there and expose yourselves to criticism and make those tough choices to make the community better. As you know, one issue that has arisen recently is the use of the online service Airbnb, an alternative to hotels which facilitates the short-term rental of partial or full space in homes for travelers. And I know at least some of you are aware that I have a few things to say on this issue, but I'm going to spare you my thoughts tonight and simply request that you put this issue on your agenda as quickly as possible, research it thoroughly, invite discussion from the community, and make a well-informed and fair decision on how to best deal with this issue and accommodate the rights and interests of everyone. I understand the community's reasons for being leery of short-term vacation rentals. You've dealt with some legitimate problems in the past. But I believe the Airbnb model solves these problems. That I think that if everyone does their research with an open mind, they'll find that, one, this is a model that can be done very well in such a way that everyone is happy and everyone's concerns are alleviated. And two, it's just a matter of time before this model becomes ubiquitous as people realize the benefits and reluctant cities catch up to public demand. And I would certainly love to take part in those discussions and offer my perspective when the time is right. July 9th, we're hoping, Mayor.
We don't have a work meeting. I mentioned to Stephen when we talked next week. The next work meeting at the end of June, Stephen's out of town. And so I think what I would propose, council, if you're so inclined, I think it would be good to talk about. We've talked about it a little bit offline in our subcommittee that's dealing with codes right now. Jimmy, Gil, and legal, and John. We just met, in fact, today. I would think if you're of a mind to do this, that July 9th would, I think, be a work meeting. Gary, would it be okay if maybe we discuss that? We could invite, it wouldn't really be a public hearing. That would be a, kind of presentation discussion. But Stephen, if you'd like to come, and we can work offline, and we'll set, kind of the time. It'd be 4 p.m. start time. And then we can have our folks kind of help us as well, and we'll just work together on that.
Very good. Thank you.
So let's do July 9th, 4 p.m. in the conference room over
Is that
here.
solid then, July 9th?
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. It is an issue. We all know that, and so it's good to talk through it, I think, and we'll hear from the public on that. Okay, now the second one I received here, is it Aileen Chambers? Now, it sounded like, is the item you had, is it on the agenda for today?
I don't have a copy of the agenda. All I have is the notices that I received in the mail regarding the 58-foot high apartment building that's being built.
Is that the one that's at Planning Commission, Ray?
Yeah, it's under other business on their planning commission, and it's pulled. It's not on tonight.
Okay. So it's not on the agenda for tonight. Was it going to be? Is that maybe why she?
Originally, it was going to be, but there were some issues with density, and it was pulled at the last moment. They're trying to move to maybe the 18th, I believe it is.
Okay. So it would be best, and will we notify the neighbors again?
We'll have to.
Okay. Would it be okay if you held then till then? We really, for this purpose, that should be at the public hearing that's tied to that issue.
Okay, I understand that. Would it be okay to respond to that via mail?
Absolutely.
Back in town?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's supposed to be the 18th of July.
Was it July or June? 18th of July? Yeah.
It'd be the next council meeting. Is that, sorry, I don't have a calendar. June 18th, then.
18th of June.
We're trying to move it not this council, but the next council meeting.
Okay. So if you can either by email or U.S. mail, you're sure welcome to respond that way if you can't be there. Okay? Thank you. Yeah. And we were just kind of talking about in terms of our rule here about, pending issues on the agenda or likely on a future agenda. If you wanted to talk today, right now, about this kind of generally in terms of building height, you're welcome to, but you can't really get specific about that building, that potential building.
Since I'm out of town, and that probably won't be back on the 18th. Is that right?
Yeah, please. If you're saying in general, it can't be specifically to this, okay?
I'll be general.
So your name again, it's Aileen Chambers.
My name is Eileen Chambers. My mailing address is 14833 Lakewood Boulevard in Paramount. Oh,
Do you live in
One.
St. George?
no, not full-time.
You have a part-time residence here?
Yes.
Okay.
The address is 14833 Lakewood Boulevard, Paramount, California. And I'm representing 247 South Five Sisters Circle, 526 South Five Sisters Drive, 1804 East, 580 South, and Lot 132.
Okay.
So my concern generally is that I understand that the allowable building height is presently 35 feet. And I'm sure that when the council and the planning commission decided that, they had some basis for deciding that. To increase that height, I think, depending on whether that is an office building or a multi-residential building, I think the council and the planning commission should consider density as being a major factor if they decide to change from the 35 feet to something substantially more.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for making the effort to come. And feel free still if you want to send something by mail or email. You're welcome to do that. Okay. Well, that will conclude then our public comment portion, and Gary will go to the next agenda item.
All right, the only item under bid openings would be item B. This is consider approval to hire a construction manager to manage the remaining construction that's going on at the All Abilities Park. There's been a little bit of confusion, and so if you read your packet, it may not be entirely correct. What we're recommending to do, we went out for proposals. We had several people submit proposals, and those have been reviewed by staff and by our landscape design group as well. And the recommendation tonight would be to hire Bud Mahas as the construction manager for the rest of the program at 7% construction fee. There was one that was 8.25%, and I can't remember the original one. It was higher than 7, right? Interstate Rock. What that is a percentage. What we're asking this manager to do is we have several elements of the park left to do, but in order to coordinate the activities of each one of the contractors while they're all in there together working, there's certain things that need to be done in order for the next phase to be completed. And so we worked with Bud Mahas in the past on some projects similar to this. And so we haven't got any problem with him. The cost is about 42. Connie, I don't know if you got a number on the 42,000 or something like. No, what? Kent, come up and explain those numbers again. That's the one you have in your packet that says 4.75% did not include all the responsibilities and obligations for insurance, for bonds, for all those other things. And so when we clarified that that bid, then they amended their bid to 8.25%, I think. 8.75%. So that's why the lowest responsible bidder is Bud Mahas at 7%.
So what we did is
anticipated number is
we did an estimate on the value of the projects that are left, and then we identified those projects that would actually be coordinated. And so we took out everything that we've already purchased and every commitment and every commitment and every contract and et cetera that's already been done, and then they gave us a percentage against that number. The actual number against the estimate is $148,000, but that includes all of the bonding, all of the insurance, all the general conditions like the restrooms and dumpsters and cleanup and security, securing the site, et cetera, as well as working with the bidding on all the subcontractors that are left on the project. It's kind of complicated, but it's...
Well, if we're going to get the thing done in a timely manner, you know, we have got to make it somebody there to keep track of all of it going. Because the worst thing that could happen is that we got a schedule going in one and we don't get the work done and somebody else comes in. We've tried to manage it with our own people and we've got it this far, but we can't go forward without somebody out there watching what's going on and scheduling.
Questions, council? Gil?
Thank you. So Kent, I think in this case, because it's a community project, but it's also not only construction management, but it's construction coordination.
Coordination.
And I think that's where Gary's talking about.
Right.
Do they understand that one day you might say, we have 100 volunteers coming to do this, and we might have, you know, a group coming to do that? Is that part of their understanding?
Their job is to sequence the entire thing.
Okay.
And to take all of the contracts that we've already led, all of the subcontractors, and all of our volunteer functions, and sequence and schedule and coordinate all of that, so we don't do one thing and then undo it with the other group.
Because some of them have to be done, obviously,
Sure.
before the next one can go, and so they're gonna coordinate that activity for us as well, and it's going to be very interesting for them to do that for the very reason that you're talking about, because we're getting people coming out wanting to volunteer their time and effort to plant trees, to put, you know, cement in, all those things that you know, we've got to make sure that we've got certain things done before we can bring a big group in there, and that's what this manager's going to do.
Okay.
And we do have funds within the approved budget that we've allocated for a construction management program.
Mayor?
Where did that final figure come in? What was that, the final figure?
The final figure that we used for the 7%?
Whatever the cost is going to be.
Yeah, it's figured against 2,100,000.
No, I meant the cost for this.
7% of that.
7%, it's roughly 148, 149. But as a part of that, essentially, is we gave them a target figure, but we've also indicated that there's a chance that we're going to have additional donations of materials and supplies, et cetera. And so they're prepared to go up or down depending on how that final number, as we bill out the final project. But that would be about what the fee would be.
And determine the up or down will be the percentage, right?
Right, the percentage, correct.
It won't just be, well, this is the number, it'll be based on the cost.
Right, and we've outlined this very specifically, which specific tasks and which projects and which contracts and which things are going to be installed and et cetera.
So as we approve this tonight, it will be a percentage approval or a dollar figure approval?
Percentage.
Thank you.
And what's the percentage
Is
again?
it 7 or 8 3/4?
7%.
Mayor, I would like to move that we approve the hire of a construction coordinator, manager, general contractor, Bud Mahas, to manage the remaining construction tasks of the Allability Park at 7%.
Second.
Motion by Betty, second by Gil. Any further discussion?
You know, only that this is a person who actually has interest in St. George as well, and have managed huge, maybe $100 million projects. So to a certain extent, to have that expertise, I think that's kind of a gift also, even though it seems like a lot of money. This money will be saved with the speed and accuracy of the project as it pulls forward. So That's why I was happy to second Betty's motion.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Kent.
Mayor, could we take care of maybe just one item on the staff reports before we go to public hearings?
Sure.
I thought Matt was going to stay, but he left. But we'll take care of it anyway, if it's all right. The recommendation from the staff regarding the Community Development Block Grant program for fiscal year 15-16. It's the staff's recommendation that we award, or upon your approval, award the following projects. First is the administration for the program, $80,000. That's for the staffing that we have for the Community Development Block Grant Program. The number one ranked one was the purchase of the homeless shelter, the Switch Point, which is a contract that we have for, I think it was 4 payments, $318,000. Number two is the Red Rock Center for Independence for a kitchen remodel for $35,000. Number three is a recommendation to award to Turn Community Services for replacement of their HVAC system and some other improvements there for $20,000. Number four is to approve the Utah Food Bank for safety and capacity building for $25,000. So that total amount is $478,000. We anticipate receiving $478,000 in funds under the Community Development Block Grant Program. So those are the recommendations from the staff.
Gary, I'm pleased that you could recommend that many. That's, providing a lot of help to groups in our community and ultimately individuals. It's a good program. Council, any questions on that? If not, I believe we need a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the Community Development Block Grant funding for the 2015-16 fiscal year.
Mayor, go ahead. Ladies first. Michelle?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Michelle to approve and second by Gil. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
It's always nice to be able to help. Those are federal dollars, but we're basically a pass-through, and we're happy to do that. Thank you.
All right, then we'll go back to public hearings. They're scheduled to be heard at 5:30. The first public hearing is to consider a public street vacation at the rear of the property located at 324 and 302 West Hilton Drive. Maybe just to make you aware of the location, there's a map behind Sean on the board 3A. This has been a complicated mess, to be honest with you, because in the past...
We never have those, Gary.
Oh, my goodness. There used to be an old road that went around the toe of that black ridge, and in that, before the current road was built, and that road went all the way and hooked into Indian Hills Drive, and that was the main access road for the west side of St. George for a long time. When the sewer outfall line was built connecting Santa Clara and St. George's plant, and we started treating those sewage, there was a line put in that roadway. I think there's also some water lines in that general area. So there was an easement, roadway easement, whether it was prescriptive or whether it was on title, whatever. That's where the roadway was. That's where some of those utilities were at. Since the time that road was abandoned and not used any longer, for whatever reason, some of the title on those easements and the right-of-way that was used as a roadway have been included in some deeds and not other deeds. In fact, some of the property that the painters building up on top where the rock wall was built and is on what may be considered a right-of-way, or there's an issue with the title with that property. Mr. Wade has purchased the property on the corner there where that building was at, and was knocked down, well, his title shows that there's no interest in the city and had actually purchased whatever interest there was and no reference on the title policy. So in an effort to try to clear up all that, the ambiguities and whatever else, the city is holding this public hearing to vacate any rights that the city would have regarding rights of way to the adjacent property owners that either have already received it or would get it tonight. That map behind Sean that has the pink is the actual, shows as city ownership. Some of the rest of it doesn't show as city ownership. And so if you're so inclined after having a public hearing that you'd want to vacate that portion in pink, that would be the action to take. However, any vacation of any rights that we would have as a city in that would be subject to them recognizing the easements that would be contained within any property that was there. So they'd have to recognize those utilities and make sure that they continued in those easements, and they would take responsibility for if there's a old sewer line in there, an old water line in that property, it's their responsibility to assume the responsibility for whatever they want to do with their property to take care of that particular pipe or whatever.
When we say there,
Whoever gets the property like in that particular case, the pink would be directly to Mr. Wade. The others, if you look at the other map underneath the aerial or the top map, you can see a yellow line.
yeah.
And so what we'd be doing tonight would be vacating any of our interest we have in the yellow area, and the pink would actually go to the property owner adjacent being Mr. Wade, if that's the action you take. So we're just clearing up the whole road all the way from Indian Hills Drive back to, what do we call that? Black Ridge Drive. Any interest we have goes, and anything that's in there is the responsibility of the property owner that has it, whoever it is.
And we are not using
We're not
those.
using those lines, no. But there are some issues with regard to the property that I think in the public hearing you might have some, because there's concerns from the adjacent property owners that we don't create a problem for them by abandoning it and the use of the property going to somebody else with regard to the toe of the slopes and the possibility of a slide on the property and all those issues. And so I think that the applicants and the people involved as the property owners are ready to discuss that with the council, and we have staff available to talk about that as well. But that's the purpose of this hearing, is to clear up this situation and let you decide how you want to handle the disposal of the property. So with that, I guess you can open the public hearing and take comments unless Sean wants to clarify it any more than what I did.
The only clarification, the point's already been made about our lines being in there, and they'll take responsibility for those abandoned lines. Those lines are transite lines, which means that they contain asbestos. As long as they're not disturbed, they're okay, but they understand that if they were to remove those or move them anyway, they have to do those in accordance with applicable environmental laws.
Council, any questions or of staff before I open the public hearing? Okay, then I'll open the public hearing for this item 3A for any who may have come to discuss this.
Council, I'm Nicholas Turner. I'm with the law firm of Gary G. Kuhlman and Associates, and we represent the interests of Mr. Painter, one of the concerned property holders. The concern being just what Mr. Esplin discussed. He owns the property that is on the hillside, and the concern is any construction or change to the toe of the slope could present problems, could present a slide, and so we just want to be heard and place on record our concern that if there is any construction at the toe of that hill, that it be done in accordance with state law, municipal law, case law, and done in a way that does not disturb our client's property or damage that. Obviously, the council is free to vacate roads, and so we'll leave it to your discretion. But we do have that concern, and it's not a small concern. The maps, it's hard to tell from the map, the topographies of such that if any work was done, our client believes at that toe, you're going to have some consequences that are going to be very expensive. And just in the spirit of prevention, we're here to just kind of sound that warning bell. That's really all I have for the council today, unless you have questions for me.
So you're not objecting to the vacation of the right-of-way. You're just concerned about what may.
Yeah, the purpose of today, we're just here to place on the record that we've actually, I should say, our office, and I'd like to actually point out, we've been talking with legal about this, and we've had discussions, and we appreciate the interchange and the willingness to do that with legal, and that is our major concern.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or Sean, anything?
I would imagine the owners below that property wouldn't want to inherit your property.
Right. I don't see how that benefits them in any way.
Yeah.
And obviously that's something that they will need to consider.
And despite case law and state law and city law, the one thing you can never avoid is the in-law.
That's correct.
All right.
I'm gonna end on that.
Drum roll. Do you play the drums? Could you do it?
I don't.
You know something?
All right.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Thank you very much.
Don't think so. Gary, anything?
Well, I was just going to say, I think that we understand that, and, you know, it's kind of ironic that we're having to address some of these issues because of I'll say it that way, title company or whatever, but the properties, the way people have taken advantage of the property and then just kind of inherited that property without it being properly vacated has created some of those issues, because Mr. Painter is already on some of that area in yellow that we're trying to clean up. But we've very concerned about cutting anything. In fact, we've had discussions with the applicant, or Mr. Wade, who's planning on building below there, and discussions about the walls, and we all understand, even though it's not part of this vacation necessarily, it's part of the construction improvement documents that will have to go forward with regard to his project for approval to build the buildings there. And so we are aware that we will follow our ordinances and our counsel from our city attorney as well to make sure we don't. We don't want a mess. We don't want somebody cutting the toe of that slope and it ended up on anybody's property, because we're all not going to benefit from that. And so the only issue I think that Mr. Wade has had with his engineers and designers is where to put the wall, and by where you locate that wall affects the height of the wall and the usability of the properties. And so I think that's a concern, and he might want to address that in his, if he's going to make any remarks. But we understand that, but we need to clear the property so we know who owns what where, so then we can work on approving their plans for use of those properties. But right now, that property in pink is owned by the city of St. George. So before they can do anything with their development, it has to be vacated through this public hearing process.
That cleans it up.
Any other questions? Any other comments from the public? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing, come back to the council for your action. Again, what we're dealing with tonight is considering this public street vacation at the rear of the property described, 324 and 302 West Hilton Drive. And it is an ordinance, so it will require a roll call vote when we get to that point.
So just to clarify for me, the difference between the yellow and the pink. The pink is we own, the yellow is a right-of-way.
Right.
So
The pink is actually, according to the title company, titled in the city of St. George's name. The rest of the yellow does not show up as a titled to anybody. Now, you could argue the prescriptive rights that the city may have in the yellow, because we put a line in there before, and there's, and all that. So at some point in time, the city assumed that we had the right to be in that. Now, title work, and for some of them, haven't recognized that. And so by vacating all our interest tonight after the public hearing, then it relieves us from any issues with regard to that, the right-of-way. Now, with regard to Mr. Painter, I think that issue would be addressed in the building process, because we do not want to allow the use that's been going to Mr. Wade would compromise the toe of that slope. But it's not necessarily in that location as much as it is further to the east, as I understand it. But we're going to have to deal with that, and we don't want to have another problem like we've had in other parts of the city. So we're very, very cognizant of the fact that we've got to be very careful there.
But by virtue of what we're doing now, then we're treating the pink and the yellow the same.
We're vacating it all, and then just giving your approval to transfer title for the pink property to the adjacent property owner, Mr. Wade. The rest of it, we're just vacating any interest we may have in that yellow, past, present, or future, with the caveat, obviously, that if there's some pipe in there or whatever else, the property owner has the responsibility to take care of that particular issue.
It takes another player out of the game. It cleans it up.
Okay, so I'm just trying. I get it, and I'm okay with it. I don't want this to be we're giving away a piece of property, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I think that the title that we have to the property, I think, was given to us by the adjacent property owner. So I'm not sure that
Okay.
that you would, if you would vacate that back, my understanding is it goes to the adjacent property
Okay,
owner.
that's what I was getting at. So typically, when we have been
Surplus property.
we've been basically given that property by adjacent property owner. When we abandon it, it goes back to the adjacent property owner.
We wouldn't charge for it
Okay.
because we didn't pay for it.
Okay.
Now,
All right,
the only difference to that, obviously, is the old part of town where you've got a platted, or a dedicated platted street that was deeded to you by the federal government. And therefore, you have the ownership of that. My understanding of this property is that we acquired it through a gift from the adjacent owners for the roadway, which
Okay.
no longer is there any longer.
Gotcha. With the added bonus that we don't have to worry about those sewer lines and
Which is well worth
which
not worrying
is probably pretty good compensation in and of itself. All right. That makes sense to me. If we're ready, Mayor, I'll go ahead and make
Sure.
a motion that we go ahead and vacate do the public street vacation at the property, at the rear of the property of 324 West and 302 West Hilton Drive.
Second.
And I want to just make sure in the minutes that if you're okay with that doesn't really clarify to me any interest we would have in that old roadway from Hilton or from Indian Hills Drive to Red Cliffs. Black Ridge Drive. Because looks like it just deals with those two lots that you can see that are there. So if you have in the motion that we would vacate our interest in all the other properties
Yes.
from Indian Hills Drive to Black Ridge Drive, that would clean up the whole thing.
So amended.
And that would give
Second.
Mr. Painter we wouldn't have any cloud on his property that he's using there now or anybody else. So.
Okay, so that motion's, I guess, sort of been amended
Yes.
and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion?
I just want to clarify if Mr. Wade and his representative are in favor of assuming that responsibility of those pipelines that may or may not be there.
Why should we? It makes it sound like no one should want this project.
Well, fortunately
That's
for
what I'm
him, that pipeline's not located in the pink area. So, and that one he's all right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote, so we'll start with Betty. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
All right, we'll go to the next public hearing, which would be, it's planning stuff. Go ahead, Ray, whoever's going to take charge of the general plan amendment.
Item 3B, public hearing to consider a general plan amendment from commercial to medium-density residential on approximately 7.9 acres, generally located at the northeast corner of Brigham Road and Desert Hills Drive. And I will bring it up on the screen here. This little graphic we use at Planning Commission, we just kind of focus to show that the topic is the general plan. We're not talking about zoning. We're not talking about any details. It's just the land itself for the general plan. Arrow shows the location. Again, Brigham Road. And here's Desert Hills Drive as it wraps around. And right where I'm pointing with the arrow is Desert Hills High School. This shows the zoning. And that's planned development residential. And this shows the general plan, and all of this area is commercial. Close-up of it. As you're aware, Ivory Homes has a building here, and they have some areas that they lease out within there. That is a commercial use in that commercial portion of the property up here. And I have some history in a staff report. I won't go through it unless we need to. But in the past, it was broken in 2 lots, and this lot one up here basically is where Ivory Homes is, and they have their commercial. And the layout that they had for it, and just a close-up of it if needed. But tonight, the request is all of this colored shaded area. They would like to take that and change it into MDR, medium density residential. So what happened, a result I kind of highlighted here is just showing these pink area up here. This is where Ivory Homes has their building. This is a vacant part that they would like in the future to come back and propose some commercial. And then all of this in here, this orange outline would be medium density residential. And there's a few photos here. I'll just quickly go through. The very bottom one here on the screen shows the building at Ivory Homes. And then as you move going to the left here, you can see all of the vacant property that's subject. And this is just a view back from the high school looking into the property in the corner. The high school and then across the street from it. That basically is it for item 3B. It's a general plan amendment, and the Planning Commission does recommend approval, and staff's available for any questions.
Is there a traffic study that would be requested for the change to come up?
Would
I
that
don't
come at
believe so.
zone?
Would that, at what point would that enter?
Is that over 100? I'll let John answer.
Their preliminary design that they provided us was about 80 units, and so 80 units doesn't trigger a traffic study.
And typically we ask about traffic studies when it goes the other direction.
Yeah.
To commercial.
Yeah.
But obviously that's a crazy busy place at certain times of the day and the year. Okay, thanks.
And I just might just add to that John's real familiar with it because tonight before the council is a request to change the general plan. If that's approved and goes forward, then the applicant submitted a zone change and they have all those details and the layout that we've seen. It's just not ready to come forward.
Great.
So.
Thanks.
Any questions, council? Seeing none, what I'll do then is open the public hearing for any who have come to make any comments regarding this item, which is number 3B on your agenda.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, people. My name is Kevin Taylor, not to be confused with the Fire Chief. I am a board member of the Hidden Valley Heights Owners Association, which is directly to the east of the property that we're in question tonight. We just had a board meeting this afternoon, and I was elected to come and represent the Hidden Valley homeowners. We wanted to first get some more information than what was provided, having heard the comments earlier about this being the very kind of first step that more information would be coming. Our biggest concern in the board meeting was, first of all, to make sure that we were not talking about where this is they're asking for a zoning change to medium density, that there would not be apartments or any type of government subsidized type of housing in this particular property. It doesn't appear to be at this point that that's the case. It sounds like townhomes. Now I have my answer to my question, which would have been approximately 80 units for that 7-acre site. So that gives us an idea of what kind of density and so forth. And I would imagine that as plans progress, that they will have more information available to us about details, architectural design, some things like that will help us. Our concern is, as homeowners on the opposite side of the street to the west, is that it's compatible with what we have now. We're not opposed to a zoning change in this property. We see it as possibly a benefit or a plus to us as opposed to having that entire property designated commercial. That one corner on the opposite side probably will not be of any consequence to us. So I'm just here to go on the record and let you know that we are concerned as a community. We have 244 units across the street in Hidden Valley. So we're familiar with the kind of density that we're talking about. We would like to be able to know, as plans progress, the details, whether or not there will be amenities in this property, pool, clubhouse, so forth, as we now have. And those kinds of things will help us determine who our neighbors are going to be at that point. But we see it, so far, we see it as a plus. We are not objecting to it at this point to have this zoning change made. And I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any response? I think it's staff, John or Ray, I think it is similar zoning, isn't it, to what is around there?
Yeah, so currently it's PDR, which is the same zoning they are, and they are requesting medium density residential, which is 5 to 9 units an acre. And it's in line with what's in the area. Where the gentleman lives is also medium density residential.
Okay. And again, even though this isn't the zone change, that would be the next step. But
correct. And it is PDR, so it'd be a PD amendment. And so they would see the elevations and the site plan at the next stage if this were approved.
Very good. Yes, Gil?
Mayor, even though the applicant is Sitla, there is in the written words here some mention of Ivory Homes, and I'm currently doing work for Ivory Homes, so I'm going to withdraw any participation from here on out on this item.
Okay. Thanks, Gil. So noted.
Stacy Young, actually representing the applicant tonight. I'd be happy to get Mr. Taylor's contact information and have our team get together with him in the next few days to week and share a little more detail on the plans and let his group see what we want to propose.
Excellent. Thank you. If you want to get together. Any other comments on this item? Okay, then I will close the public hearing and come back to you, council, for your action or any questions first.
Makes sense. I'll go ahead and make a motion unless there's any other discussion to approve the general plan amendment from commercial to medium density residential on approximately 7.89 acres.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy with a second by Joe. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Joe, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item under public hearings is item 3C. Consider a zone change to rezone. And there's three portions of property to this. One is about 1.5 acres from C2 to PDR. The second is 0.07 acres from PDR to C2. And the third portion is 0.4 acres from C2 to PDR, and I'll illustrate this in just a moment. And it's located at the southeast corner of Desert Canyons Parkway and the Southern Parkway. Development Solutions is the applicant. So here's an aerial of the general area showing the Southern Parkway and Desert Canyons Parkway. And the zoning is showing the C2 and the PDR. And this was just submitted when we did the radius list. I call it a bow tie. It kind of looks like a bow tie to me. But it's showing...
Before it's tied, right?
Yeah, before it's tied. It's showing the green here and green and then a purple. And those are the 1, 2, 3 portions of property that they're wanting to change. And the reason is, I'm going to jump ahead. We asked the applicant to superimpose a proposed subdivision that is to come here. And you can see this kind of light greenish color. It's commercial now, but the idea is to change that from commercial into a zone for residential that'll be compatible with the proposed layout. This little portion here, the center, is going from residential to become commercial, so that's a swap. And then down here, this third piece, and again, I think this illustrates really well why it's being done, just so that it's clean line here separating the commercial from the residential, and you can see closer in this view. I'm going to look over the notes here. I think that pretty much concludes the comments. Again, it's a zone change, 3 portions. Some are going to residential to commercial and vice versa. And the Planning Commission did not have a lot of discussion on this one. They understood the purpose of it and recommends that the City Council consider approving it.
Questions, council? Okay. Let's see on this one. Does the applicant have any desire to present anything? If not, I'll open the public hearing for anyone that's come to offer their opinion or asking questions about this item 3C on our agenda today. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to you, council, for any questions or comments or an action.
I will try and make this motion.
We're all counting on you, Michelle.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. I'll make a motion to approve the zone change at Area 1 on the 1.695 acres from C2 to PDR, Area 2 on the 0.074 acres from PDR to C2, and Area 3 on 0.412 acres from C2 to PDR, and Desert Canyons Parkway and the Southern Parkway.
Second.
Okay, we have a very good motion by Michelle and a second by Gil. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor, starting with Betty, say aye.
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 That motion carries.
Next on the agenda is item 3D. It's a zone change. It'll take me a bit longer to present this one, but I'll try to go through it quickly. It's public hearing to consider a zone change amending the PDC, Plan Development Commercial Zone, on 1 acre of property that's generally located east of the I-15 freeway and north of 300 South to accommodate future development of a sprinkler supply wholesale retail store. Mike Canning, applicant. I'll bring up the image here. So basically, here's the freeway on the left side. X marks the spot. It's this property. For reference, here's 300 South Street. And ServPro is this longer piece of property right here that's developed to the north of it. And high-density residential to the east and to the south. A close-up, this is showing that's PDC, Plan Development Commercial. And this tonight is an amendment to the zone change because it's vacant property so that you can see their layout and buildings, etc. This shows the layout that they revised as of May 5th. We've gone through a couple changes, and I'll show you in a little bit some other recommendations that were discussed at the Planning Commission and some comments from staff. But basically, they're wanting to put a building here. And what I'm pointing to now is a large billboard I'll show you in a photo. And parking in front. They want to put a covered lean-to here for storage. There's an existing block wall along here. Again, 300 South down here. 25 feet of landscaping because they'd like to have a solid 6-foot wall here. And originally they had requested an 8-foot wall and they wanted to have it within a 25 feet, but the code doesn't allow anything over 6 feet in height, and it doesn't allow 6 feet until they get back at 25 feet. So an entrance here and here. This is colored just to make it jump out a little bit more. Again, the proposed building, the covered lean-to, 14 feet high. Green shows landscape areas, and I want to talk about those in a little more detail. And then what was proposed, and Planning Commission supports this, is to have little islands along here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to put trees in for landscaping. And I'll jump around a little bit, but basically where the arrow's going, you'll have a 6-foot wall here, which would be solid, and on the inside would be planters for the trees, and between them, where I'm pointing now, would be 13 spaces, parking spaces. This is a colored site plan where they're showing the trees, the landscaped area in the front. And there are elevations of the building. On the wall behind Councilman Almquist, and I'll show it also on the screen, but I'll just point to it. There's some photos of another building they've just built up north, and that's what they envision it would look like here, and then their colored rendering, which are in your packets, and I'll show on the screen. And this one up on the top is the covered storage. It's open on all sides, basically, except for this little dropped area in the front. Although I should mention it is covered on each end, the north and south. So back to the screen again. Besides what's there, where the council can look at a little closer, is the photo of an actual building that's very close to what they're proposing to build here, and just different views of it. Again, the colored elevations, and this is that covered storage area. This is looking from the freeway, and you can see ServPro to the north, and I'm just accentuating, here's the billboard that'll be there, and the building will be right very close to it, and 300 South here. Existing high-density residential to the east. There is an existing 6-foot block wall all along here, and another view. We spent a lot of time talking about the layout. Staff had proposed some different alternatives, alternative 2 and 3, and Planning Commission had liked that. This alternative 2 is a little older. It's just showing that the fence needed to be moved back at 25 feet because originally this white gap in here, they had moved it up closer. In the site plan you saw tonight, they have moved that back where this would all be landscaping where I'm pointing now. This one is a little different. This is one that staff had recommended, is to move the building up front, have the parking here, and have the fence 6 foot along here on each side of the building. That way you'd get rid of the view of the fencing out front, and it wouldn't look as much of, for lack of a better word, like a compound or an industrial. The applicant does prefer to have the fence in front, and we've had that discussion with the applicant, with Planning Commission, but this was our suggestion that we liked. And we had suggested to put the covered lean-to back here. I guess the best explanation for that is to get it away from being next to the residential. The residential does have the 6-foot block wall. They do have a lot of trees and vegetation in here, but as they look through, they would see that covered area. And so those were some alternatives we talked about. These are just photos of the area in case you need to refer back to them. This is on 300 South looking towards the freeway. This is on 1200 East looking to the north. And then this is just showing that curb, gutter, and sidewalk exist on 300 South, and don't see a need for them to do that improvement that's already in there. That shows, again, the billboard, and they would have to work around it on the property. This kind of is a good illustration. There's an existing fence, kind of like a chain link, not exactly a chain link, and all of this overgrown vegetation, but you can see how much higher the freeway is in this photo in comparison to the lot. You can see it here, but the bottom photo really shows that you'll be looking down on the site from the freeway. A Couple more views on site, just kind of moving around. There is a chain link fence here between the north property line and ServPro. And what was brought up in Planning Commission is that needs to not be there. It needs to be solid because they want to have things stored outside, and the way the code is written is it has to be solid. And this is just looking at La Palma condominiums, just by the other side of 300 South. This shows that there is a 6-foot block wall. You can see the trees and vegetation there on the east property line of this project. Difference in the grade. That concludes the concludes the visuals. I'm going to go to the staff report. Make sure I didn't miss anything. I've given you the location. The building itself they'd like to do is 6,000 square feet. And it'd be about 28 feet high, single story. Behind the mayor and Councilman Almquist on the wall there is some material samples. And for the building itself, they have samples I'm pointing to. Besides the colored renderings, you can see the actual. And then this is a sample of what they'd like to do for the 6-foot fence. Now, I'll have to let the applicant kind of talk and address that. It's a corrugated metal, it's a brown, and I can't think of anywhere else in the city that we've done something like that. We would envision some columns between it, and then this would span. One thing the applicant mentioned to me, and I'll kind of bring out the council, I didn't really mention it so much to the Planning Commission, where I'm pointing right here along the top, my understanding is that would not have any cap on it, not any top. So I don't know, it seems like architecturally it might need something, but I just thought I'd point that out. I'm going to go to page 2 of the report. I'm going to hit the comments quickly. I won't read every item, but some of them. Number 1, written text, they provided that. Number 2, a narrative, they provided that. Number 3, a use list, because this is a zone change amendment. Sometimes you'll see long list of use. Well, there's really not any list except the sprinkler supply. That's all that they envision. They want to be there for a long time. They've been in a community over there near where Stephen Wade has the dealership for a long time. So staff and Planning Commission is fine with that. If there was a change in ownership in the future, then they'd have to come back before council. 4, the design is what you see tonight for the buildings, the colors, materials. I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. Item 7, the fencing height can't go over 6 feet. 8, fencing by the residential. There's that existing 6-foot block wall. And that is required to separate residential properties, and I put the code sections in there. Number 9, landscaping next to the residential. There's a 10-foot landscape area, and that's required next to any residential property. That's required in the code. And I'm going to try to go back and point out to you. It's this area right here that I'm talking about. Now, what's a little unusual about it is you have the high density here to the right. You have an existing block wall, but the code does require 10 feet of landscaping between a commercial project and residential. The applicant said, well, we'll put some rock and gravel here. But Planning Commission staff said that doesn't really accomplish any landscaping. It needs to have some trees or bushes in here. One of the difficulties with it is there's an easement along here and there's a sewer line. So the applicant was concerned, didn't want to put anything in here that would grow with trees and have roots damage the sewer. And the reason the sewer comes through here is that goes to ServPro. So what was presented at Planning Commission and staff recommended is still to meet the intent of the code is to have some landscaping in there, and we thought if they put some root barriers in, perhaps have a type of shrub that would grow very tall, 8 or 10 feet high, then that could satisfy the code and have something there. It's just unusual because you got the residences, you got the block wall, you've got this area, but still the code requires it, and we didn't see any way to bypass that. So, all right, I'm going to jump to item 11, and I'm on page 2. Fencing, screening, storage, 6-foot side-up screen wall is required for any outside storage. So pointing again at the site plan, they have a 6-foot block wall here that screens. They would screen in the front, although we had suggested to move it back further if the building was moved. They'll have solid here by the freeway, and then they need to take out that chain link between ServPro and put solid there. Parking, 13, we feel that they're going to meet that. We'll look at that during the civil plan check. And jumping down to 18, I've already talked about the size of the building and the height. I'm going to go on to page 3 and touch. Some of this is redundant. I'll try to not make it so much, but this is the motion that the Planning Commission made, recommendation approval to the council. So number 1, acreage. The zoning on the entire zone change amendment is recommended for approval as PDC. For, again, amendment. Number 2, the use list, just the one use, sprinklers. Number 3, the building. Recommend approval of the building, the way it looks, the colors and materials. 4, the shed. The Planning Commission did recommend relocating the storage shed to the north. However, the applicant does prefer it where it's at. So that'll be discussed, I'm sure. 5, the front landscaping. The applicant had asked to have palm trees in there. We've basically told them that the code requires to have street trees, and they could probably cluster or do something and put some palm trees in, although that might not look as good if you got a Raywood ash next to palm tree, but we've answered their question as to that. 6, the east side landscaping by that block wall, a 10-foot landscape strip between the site and residential zone to east shall be landscaped, and recommend high-growing shrubs and a root barrier. 7, by the freeway, talks about the islands, recommending approval of those islands, and then the parking spaces between them. 8, second paragraph down, a solid fence shall be installed on a north property line by ServPro. And finally, the last page, 4, signage. They'll have to comply with sign ordinance, separate actions. 10, their civil plans. And I think that concludes my comments. Staff's available for questions, and then like to give the applicant opportunity, of course, to come up too. And I'll leave the site plan on here on the screen.
Council, questions of staff before we open the public hearing? Where did we end up with the fencing on the north?
Where I'm pointing along here to have solid. I don't think there's any contesting to that. It's just we've noticed that needs to be solid, and I don't think the applicant is opposed, but I'll let them address that.
So does this meet our requirements?
When we ask for a solid fence, there's a lot of sections in the code where we say you can't use chain link and slats, and typically we see a block wall. Sometimes we see wood, although in this environment it's not really recommended. Sometimes you can see something that's imitation, simulated wood, or vinyl. There's nothing, to my knowledge, that says they can't do the metal, but I think the council has the option of what, because this is a zone change amendment, what you prefer for the materials, if you think it works or not.
Right. We were just, I think, all thinking back to
A
similar request, and we have pictures that are remaining here of that material. And this does look different, but I wonder, would it stay looking different, you know?
I did put in your packets, Mayor, I thought I had it on a screen, but it's in your packet, of pictures of their other location where they have used this fence before, and they'll probably talk and address that. From the photos, it looks nice, but we haven't been up to see or touch or feel it or see if it's flimsy or solid or if the top's sharp and somebody's going to get cut, you know. So we have concerns, but...
John?
I just wanted to look at the staff's alternative before we move on. So when the staff originally started to look at it, we were concerned about the location of the building. It's a little bit different than what we see on your typical commercial buildings. It's located in the rear, and they're proposing a solid fence be located along the entire property. Staff was concerned with the building looking more like a compound. Typically in our commercial areas, we have the building to the front. We want to see the building, and we want all the stores to be located in the rear. This is also a unique site because it is located next to residential, and so we felt that the presence of the building up against the street would be a much more attractive site than it would be on the way the applicant is proposing. This is all the alternative 3. That's what staff kind of came up with, showing the building brought forward with the fencing located along the side of the building, and having the lean-to on the rear adjacent to the existing commercial, the ServPro, and leaving more of an area between the residential and the commercial building, opposed to what the applicant is proposing, which is to have the lean-to running along the residential. And so that's what staff had recommended to the Planning Commission. I just wanted to show the reasoning behind that, and the reason why we think it's a better layout than what was proposed.
Remind me of then what the fence material would be in staff solution number 3.
We were okay with what was being proposed with the corrugated. It'd be a lot better back behind the building opposed to running along 300 South and having the solid fence being the prominent feature of the site opposed to the building, which it's a nice looking building. We'd like to see that up against the street or closer to the street rather than the corrugated metal.
Okay. Council, any questions of staff? Is the applicant here, and would they like to say anything? I show Mr. Mike Canning as the applicant. Okay. Then I will, yes, Stephen? How about I open the public hearing? I'll open the public hearing for any who've come to express their thoughts or ask questions about this.
I'm not involved in this, so I didn't even know it was on the agenda, but I stayed because I wanted to see what happened. They're my neighbors, and I'm telling you, they're great neighbors. Sprinkler Supply is sprinkler stuff, and they've got trucks coming in and all this. But if you'll drive by there on your way home, they got a waterfall coming out of there, and I have to keep up with them. They really do a nice job. It's clean and nice, and at one point, they're great neighbors. One point, my guys drove a golf cart and hit one of their little sprinkler heads, and they're just so polite and dealing. They're just great people. I think what I saw is a real asset. It looks a hell of a lot better than what it looks like right now as I drive by there, and I'm trying to picture the things on either side, and this is going to be nice. And boy, they just have pride about them. I wouldn't know Mike Cannon if he was standing here, talk to him on the phone, but they're good people.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get a good thing there.
Thank you, Stephen. Any others who would like to express comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Come back to you, council, for any further discussion. Gary, anything?
Well, I just think the reason the staff is recommending that is that they do a good job out there, and I drive by that every night going home. But if you put the wall up right behind the landscaping, and all you see is the wall, you don't see the building as much. And I think our comment was that it softens the project, not that the landscaping will be nice and all that, but the wall goes next to the building rather than having it in the front. And that was our concern, is that if you look at the alternate where they put it in the front of the thing, and then when you drive down the street, you look in, you see the wall. It looks like industrial property, and that was our concern. It doesn't change it that I can see anything other than the parking goes in front of the building's moved back. It doesn't decrease their ability to function. Now, if the owner was here or the applicant was here to maybe rebut why, that was we just wanted where you've got commercial, residential, and the freeway, it's a tough sell, but we certainly want to work with them, and the Planning Commission chose to recommend not that, but we wanted you to see our alternative as staff because there was good reasons why we thought it would look better for the surrounding neighborhood to have it with the landscaping, not just the fence, landscaping and then the fence. Because then there's a no man's land between the fence and the landscaping. This way it's part of the project by having the landscaping first and then the building and as part of the fence. That was our thoughts.
Mayor, are we approving just the zone change tonight?
Well, we are, but because it's a PD zone, what you see is what you'll get.
What you'll get? Okay.
Yeah.
John, do you know why the applicant's not here?
No, they were notified of the public hearing, and I'm not sure why they're not here.
Did they ever express that they didn't care which?
They did
one?
not like it. They would rather not have the staff's opinion. I don't know exactly why.
At the Planning Commission, and Councilman Boca can expand on this, but they actually tabled the item and requested the applicant go back and take a look at the site to see about, complying with what staff's recommendation was, and they came back and decided they weren't interested in revising the site plan.
I have a comment about that. As I recall from the meeting, their theory was that moving that forward made it so they couldn't get past the building with the big trucks, unload, and get back out. That was kind of their theory, without me being able to visualize that in my head, how wide that really is. I've seen truck drivers really be able to drive things in wonderful places. But part of this was that they felt that they couldn't get back there to unload their vehicles and so forth, the big trucks that come in. But my question also along that, I'll ask it later because there's somebody who wants to make a comment.
Well,
the
the public hearing's been closed.
Okay.
But are you the applicant?
I'm not Mike Canning, but I
Represent-
apologize for being just a little bit late. The reasoning is what.
Would you
Mr.
state your
Volkert,
name for the
Denton
record?
Worthington. Denton Worthington.
Thank you.
Okay. In our storage area, we're going to have the lifts of 20-foot long PVC pipe. And if we do have the fence and the building the way it's proposed in alternate 3, then that's going to significantly cut down our storage area, and as Mr. Bulk had said, going to impede our ability to move that pipe around in that yard, and then also the big trucks coming in. We don't have them, I mean, they're not going to be on a daily basis, but they will come, several times a week. So it's just ease in the way we do business and the product that we will be receiving.
Say that again one more time. You don't have big trucks coming every day, just like semi trucks?
No. You know what? What will happen is we will, we've got a main warehouse in our West Jordan location, and once a week, it's not a semi, it's a large truck though, we will take delivery of product to our St. George location.
Okay, Gary?
As part of that then, is that the ability to do day-to-day operations, like once you get the big truck in here and get the pipe off, would the alternate 3 have an effect in utilizing the pipe once it's under the shed as far as getting around? Is there enough room to, your service trucks, your delivery trucks, whatever you have to, get rid of the product and take it off site? Is there enough room there for that?
There would be, but it's going to be, like I said, it's going to impede the ease of doing that. And when you have the building in the middle, it definitely, breaks it up. And it would be nice to have the building in the back and to have.
But it looks to me like with the building in the back, it still is cutting half of your storage off because you wouldn't even be able to access half of your storage, right? Because it's right next to on the east side of your building.
What we would put there is fertilizer, seed.
Okay.
Coiled up pipe.
Yep.
Okay.
So your normal customer base, I mean, do you have people coming and going steadily all day or what? Tell me.
Yes.
It's wholesale. It's
wholesale, retail. Yeah, and generally, probably mid-morning is the busiest time. And normal hours are Monday through Friday, 8 until 5, closed Saturday, and of course Sunday.
okay. Any other questions? Gil?
Well, I don't really know.
Comments?
I don't really know how to approach this, or maybe you can't answer it at this point, but at some point we'll need to address something that I detect part of my own expertise as a landscaper and in seeing the landscape plan. And I know we bring our own expertise to the table, so I hope you don't mind me commenting on something that I've been commenting on for about 24 years.
Okay.
And that is that we get plans drawn up north that don't work here. This plan happens to be drawn in Lehi, Utah, from a respectable company that has to this point not operated here. Now, I agree with Mr. Wade. Your current location is awesome, and it's along Black Ridge, the best landscaping that's there. And I was surprised, therefore, to see that this is such a departure from not only the variety, density, and general appeal of what is on this plan. So not to get too nitpicky at this point, but the trees that have been suggested are not going to be good for that location. They're not going to get to the height and maturity that would produce any shade or blockage, which was the point of the entire freeway lining ordinance or suggestion that we've had along the entire corridor. They're very susceptible to wind, that variety that's there, and those will break. Then when you get to the plant list, it's even more problematic. There's things that are not zoned for here. There are things that they're suggesting might grow here, but which no landscape supply, as far as a nursery supplies, because as they've brought them in, they've noticed that everyone comes back and says, hey, that died. And so I would strongly suggest, again, that before I can even lean towards a positive vote here, that this be revisited in its entirety with a local company's influence, even if that means, you know, just an hour or two of consultation on what would actually work here. Or bring this landscape architect down here to your current location and say, this works, it's gorgeous, put this at the new location. And believe me, we don't want you to not have a landscape that works and is beautiful and that will survive. So without any additional cost, I believe that you can take that leap and save yourself some headache.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I don't know, I'm just confused by this whole location. I agree with what Mr. Wade had to say. They're in a great location where they are, and they're going to move, but you said yourself you're really busy mid-morning and morning, and you look around and it is apartments and kids everywhere, and you're on a cul-de-sac. It boggles my mind.
It's actually a much better location than where they are
Well,
for function.
Was there any concern on that at Planning Commission, Joe? Were they concerned about this? I mean, it's not just as it's surrounded by residential. You kind of got to drive quite a ways through residential to get there. I mean, it's not just, oh, you're right here barely sneaking into some residential. I mean, there's a lot around there.
Yeah, that wasn't as big a concern as we might have heard from. The people live in the east side of that property were concerned more about the height, the building, the view that they would have out the back. The traffic, I don't recall much said about traffic at all. Nothing that I remember.
So were these homeowners notified?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I agree.
And there was some letters originally at the Planning Commission. I don't know if they're here today. I don't see it.
I mean, I agree with Michelle that it is far different from the location they have as far as residential goes. But I also know who goes there, and it's not semi-trucks, and it's mostly a contractor pulling a trailer, or contractors most of the time without a trailer, because they're just used to it where you are, that a trailer doesn't work.
Right.
So, but, you know, the cul-de-sac is a bit of an asset, because where the residential is situated isn't at the end of that cul-de-sac in such a way that the residents use it. So
I think the location of the property is a little bit of a concern, because what are you going to use it for?
Yeah.
It's not going to be residential next to the freeway, and so, you know, I think the use probably could work there, but it is a little bit off the commercial beaten track as far as, you know, having to drive next to some apartments that are on the one side of it, but there's commercial next to it on the one side, so and I'm not sure what else could go in there and make a lot of sense. I think the use is okay, compatible with the neighborhood, and I guess if contractors don't want to drive through the commercial area to get to it, they'll go to another one. But I think it works, and we don't want to try to design their landscaping plan for them. We just thought the building looked great. We ought to see it from that standpoint rather than the industrial park idea of having the fence closer to the road. But it'll work either way. Obviously, Planning Commission felt differently. They voted to approve the plan without the building being in the middle. So, but I think it's a tough piece of property to develop. In fact, it's sat vacant for a long time, and so is the one next to it, Service Pro, and so something needs to go in there. Whether this might be as good as we're going to see in that location.
Well, and if you do look at the some of the pictures that we've been shown, there actually are very few access points, to those residential areas. It's probably medium density, I would guess, and there's maybe, is it high?
It's quite dense. I'm not sure what the zoning is.
But you've got on that road, you've got one entrance that would be right across the street, and one down a little bit further, and nothing on the north side for quite some distance. So it's not a backing out, in and out, and it's not single-family residential. It is residential, but it's high density, so maybe a little bit less concern in terms of the backing in and out of a driveway or something across the street.
Another concern that I have, and maybe it doesn't need to be addressed right now, and you can tell me if it doesn't. If in fact this council recommended alternate 3, how does that fit in? Because the owner did not want to consider that when it went through the Planning Commission. So if we vote and say, no, it's okay to go there, but you got to use alternate 3, what does that do to his original design and what he wanted? Does that make it start all over again? If he says, I don't agree with you? I think he's presenting one thing, and we're trying to present something else. How does that get resolved among all the parties involved?
I guess he'd have a choice at that point in time to say, I want to go back, have it reconsidered, or go back through the process because it's a PD. It's not a commercial zone change that allows anything to go in the commercial zone change. So you have to approve the site plan as part of the condition of the zone. That gives you more license to say, I want to change it. Now, if you said, we don't think that the alternative that the Planning Commission is recommending fits what we see as a council, we're going to deny that, but we'll approve that next one down, the alternative 3, because it's a PD zone, we know what we're getting, and we can see it. So it would give him the choice to say, okay, I'll accept that, or I'll come back through the process and maybe modify it a little bit or whatever and have you reconsider it. The problem with that is that I think you have to wait a period of time to come back on a zone change, don't you?
Would it be a year because of if the project was the same?
Well, and I think that it probably would not be a significant change, whatever they're going to do, because what you're proposing and what we could come up with would be pretty similar. And right now, as was pointed out, it's already zoned planned development. So anybody with a planned development commercial zone, as we've seen with your former employer over on Dixie Drive, that property, the more business forms, they've come in various times to say, can I add this use or can I change it? I think we would look at it that way on this, since it's a PD zone, that we would allow them to come in and not be subject to the typical zone change.
Well, and they certainly know their business better than the staff knows their business. So, I mean, if it hampers what they're trying to do with regard to their being able to service the business, and maybe that's, something that you need to consider as far as the trade-off on the landscaping or the fencing. But if everything was equal and they could do it without creating a problem for their business, it would seem that you'd want to go with alternate number 3. But if it hampers their business, then maybe that's a decision you've got to make. So we don't want don't want to put more regulations on them than what they can do to run their business. And
So just to clarify your answer, is there a waiting period?
There's not. I believe because it's a PD commercial, they can come back in and say, okay, if you came back and said we don't like the elevations, they could come back and say, okay, here's the new elevations. The whole idea that the reason why it's before you is because it's a PD commercial. Otherwise, as Gary mentioned, if it was just a regular commercial zone, if it met all of our requirements technically, it would not be before you. It would just be approved. The site plan would be approved.
but I guess the issue is how would it get back to the process? Are they going to go back, if you say no to that, are they going to then go back to the planning commission and propose what they did before, or come and say, I don't know, I guess they'd have to change something in order to have it come back?
You could table it tonight and then bring it back before you and not have to go back to the planning commission on that. You already have their
It
input.
seems like the planning commission did the same thing, you know, and we don't seem to be any different than we were when it very first started. Even though we may keep tabling it, we end up at the same place at the end.
Well, they recommended something. So, we don't need to go with that, but they did recommend something.
It's true.
I think sometimes all the parties are motivated once it reaches the city council level, then maybe they might be at the planning commission level to have some give and take on, on items like
I think the other alternative you could possibly do is to continue. You've already closed the hearing, but you could ask the staff to get with the owner, and I know you're not the owner, you're his representative tonight, right? Get with the owner who's the application is with and see exactly what the opposition to that would be, and see if it's just service related or there's something we're missing, and try and discuss whether or not this could be more appropriate given the concerns the council has to address, and then bring it back in 2 weeks to your next regular meeting for a final thing. That's one alternative that might give us a chance. If the applicant knows that the council may turn it down and he has to start over, it might say, well, here's the reasons why, and then the staff could feel a little better maybe about something we recommended wouldn't work. If it absolutely doesn't work, then we would know that.
Council, any thoughts?
Yeah, it just seems to me that we're at an impasse, and this isn't the first instant of that. It's been going on for some time. We seem to want to recommend one thing, they seem to want to have another thing.
Question.
I don't know when we finally say we have to make a decision.
That's your choice.
Personally, if we're saying this is a difficult piece of property and we're going to put commercial in a residential zone, in my mind, we make it so they can do their business how they want to do it. Quite frankly, no one's going to go down to the end of that road that isn't going to Sprinkler Supply. So, I mean, really, how worried are we about, besides having a little bit of a buffer between the residential, and again, I'm saying if we are going to put commercial in the residential area like that, then to me, we need to just let them do what works best for them, and it's going to look nice either way.
And again, it's already zoned PD commercial.
I agree.
Well,
I think we're just
I
maybe
think
trying
that,
to
and
manage
that's
their
fine. The
business.
staff has no problem with their request. The planning commission recommended. We just wanted you to see if there's another possible alternative. So, that would get it off dead center, and I think that Councilman Hughes makes some good points there.
Quite frankly, the only reason why I'm willing to look at it that way in this residential zone is because obviously it's a difficult piece of property. It doesn't seem like there's been a whole lot of residents that are up in arms about having it there. It is more of a quiet type of residential.
Commercial.
Or commercial. So not real heavy use. I don't think it's like a Home Depot or something where people are coming and going because it's just the type of business they do. I think it's mostly contractors, right? So.
Well,
they're not open on Saturday, didn't you say? That tells me it's
or
more
Sunday.
wholesale or Sunday,
But they also make deliveries, so a lot of that is internal. Jimmy took the words right out of my mouth. The only thing I was going to ask staff is, it's not intrinsically against any code or building or anything for them to have alternative 2, correct? Well, they know how to run their business and they know what it's going to take.
Alternative 2 is, I think, you had to set the fence back because of the setback, right?
Well, again, this was early on, this alternative too, and this is where I had just drawn the fence way back, and they've done that.
Yeah, so alternative 2 really is
Yeah.
what the planning commission recommended.
The zoning's already in place, we're just doing the amendment to the PDR, so nobody can claim that they didn't know that commercial could go in here.
No, and the people were noticed too, so I mean, it
Okay.
went through a zone change process because we're not building what was approved there before. So what you're approving is what you see as alternative 2, basically, with the recommendations from the planning commission.
That being said, I would like to see them do a different fence. So how can I make that motion that way? Is that possible?
You can do, it's a PD zone, you can approve it and state in it that you're approving it with a block wall, if that's what you want, between the 2 commercial properties and where they're proposing. That's up to you. Certainly don't think the applicant would argue that if he has to go back through the process and come to another hearing, so.
So to clarify with the staff, where would this fencing be requested right now?
On
On
alternative,
the freeway side and the north side?
all around the property.
3 of the 4
Except
sides.
the- except the east side.
The fence would be here,
Where are you at?
along the freeway, and then it would be along 300 South. This is already a block wall, so they're not changing anything there. And then get rid of that chain link, and they'd have to put the wall here, so 3 sides.
So this material that they're recommending would go on those 3 sides?
Correct, here,
If we
here,
approve what that
and
had.
here.
Including the front, did you say the front on 300 South?
The front also. They'd have some type of a swinging gate here, but
This is what the applicant wants right here, right?
yes. Let me go back to there.
I guess, and I'm really not, I'm probably the least picky one up here, but that gives me the compound feeling, that metal fence, and I don't know if that matters.
We
but-
talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah. I have seen this type of fence in other places.
Hilldale,
Yes.
that's where I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's going to be whatever the council decides here, if it's all metal or block, or maybe a combination, you know, maybe some block in front with some piers and same color.
It just seems like the biggest challenge is in the front.
Yeah.
The only thing in their favor that might soften a little bit, I don't know, I'm kind of guesstimating, is normally they'd have 15 feet here. They've got a huge area, 25 feet, and if they landscape it a lot and take away from that, it might make it look a lot better.
I mean, don't know if they'd want to, but in that front piece, you know, if you mixed block with wrought iron, that'd be okay, wouldn't it? Dress it up a little bit. They may not like it, but they could have that option. Ray?
Except it has to be solid because
Does it?
because they're storing things in here. The idea is
Gotcha.
that at site you can't look through it. Block or stone would be nice, but they couldn't have the wrought iron.
On all 3?
Yeah, solid, solid, solid.
Okay.
You're storing outside.
Okay. Council, what would you like to do?
I would actually move that we approve the zone change for the site plan that they have. And if you could like that kind of a motion, should I go ahead? All right, I move that we approve the zone change.
Amendment.
Amending Plan Development C zone on the 1 acre property generally located east of I-15 and north of 300 South to accommodate the future development of a sprinkler supply wholesale retail store. Mike Canning as the applicant, and just the way they have it.
And the stipulations of the Planning Commission?
Yes, according to the Planning Commission.
I will second that.
We have a motion by Betty and a second by Joe. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, starting with Joe, this is a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, 3E. It's a public hearing to consider amending Title IX, Chapter 13 of City Code pertaining to off-premise signs. The applicant is City of St. George. On December 4th, 2014, the City Council approved a temporary ordinance prohibiting new off-premises signs or conversion of static off-premise signs to electrical message signs. Currently, our sign code regarding conversion of static off-premise signs to electrical message signs does not address several potential issues. For instance, there's not a specific distance from residential to digital message boards or digital off-premise signs. Additionally, this amendment will clean up several of the items in the current code. It also addresses or reduces the number of billboards that are permitted on each exit. Just to go through some of the proposed amendments. The first is under definitions. There's been some conversation on whether or not changing the face of billboards or converting them to digital is an alteration. And so to clarify that, under alterations, we have inserted language that does state that a conversion from non-electrical display to electrical display is considered an alteration. We did provide updated definition of electronic message sign. EMS means any sign or portion thereof that displays electronic images, graphics, or pictures with or without textual information, such a sign has the capability of being changed or altered by electronic means on a fixed display screen composed of a series of lights including LEDs, fiber optics, plasma displays, light bulbs, or other illumination devices within the display area with the message is displayed. EMS includes computer programmable, microprocessing, electronic, or digital displays. We did eliminate any other references like digital billboards. We eliminated that from the code, and any other references, we combined them into this one definition. This is the code that deals specifically with off-premise signs. And just to go through some of the language, some of it is just, like I mentioned, making it consistent through the code. Other changes are more substantial. 4C, this is one that's a major change. It says no off-premises sign structures shall be located closer than 1,500 square feet to another off-premise sign structure. And this is the section that's is being proposed to be removed, except that within 2,000 square feet of an interchange, signs may be 500 feet apart. And so that's being proposed to be eliminated. Also D, off-premises signs must be at least 200 feet. We are changing it from 200 feet to 300 feet away from any residential zone. 4E, the color of the structure and pole of each off-premises sign must be approved by City Council and must be maintained as approved. This is specifically for any new billboards that would come forward and want to go into the community. And so they would need to come to City Council for approval of the color of the actual structure for the sign. E, that's dealing specifically with the conversion from digital to what we're calling EMS, which is the digital billboards. Messages displayed on off-premise EMS shall have a minimum display duration of 8 seconds and must be static during each individual message. No portion of the message may flash, scroll, twirl, bounce, pulse, twinkle, animate, change, color fade in or fade out, or imitate movement. The transition from one static display to another must be instantaneous on the entire sign face. Off-premises EMS must have a default mechanism to turn off the sign within 24 hours of a malfunction. Brightness. 4 is dealing specifically with brightness, and it basically states that as the sun goes down, the lightness will automatically adjust, and so at some point in time, it's not really bright. It adjusts with the time of day. 4, this is dealing specifically with distance from residential to the EMSs. Says a minimum separation of 1,500 100 feet is required for off-premise EMS, which face the same direction and are located on the same side of I-15. Off-premises EMS must be at least 300 feet away from any residential zone. Non-conforming signs, again, there's been a lot of questions on whether or not the conversion of a static sign is increasing the non-conformity of a sign. By inserting this language, it does state that it is altering a non-conforming sign. If in case the billboard is non-conforming, then it wouldn't, it'd be increase in non-conforming, it wouldn't be able to be converted. And I'll just read the alterations. A non-conforming sign shall be raised, moved, replaced, converted for a non-electronic message sign to electronic message sign. And so that's basically stating that it is considered an alteration. And that concludes what's being proposed as part of this amendment. Staff is available for any questions. We have received letters. I believe there's 2 letters that are in front of the council.
I have a question, John. 2 questions, actually.
Okay.
Way over my head. But those requirements on 8 seconds and no fade out and all those kind of things that we've come up with,
Yeah.
do they meet the standards or the opportunity for the sign builders to do those things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of that's actually based on UDOT is the 8 second. We added in some language that required it to be an immediate change opposed to, scrolling or having them fade in and
so
out.
the sign company has the ability to do those things we're talking about?
Correct.
Okay, my second question is, and it's probably in there somewhere, but it says it can't be within 1,500 feet of another digital sign. What about a regular sign that's not digital?
In the current billboards, it requires a 1,500.
So it's the same
foot,
whether it's
and
a
so
digital.
it's the same whether or not it's digital.
Okay, thank you.
So that's not a change.
The 1,500 foot is not a change. That's existing in our code now. The change in regards to distance is dealing specifically with the increase from the residential to both the static and also the digital billboards, and then also that reduction or that within the interchange, we allow for signs to be separated 500 feet. Now, we're removing that so it's consistently 1,500 feet apart when you get closer to the exits.
That's a change.
That is a change, yes.
Other questions for staff?
Mayor?
Yeah.
To go from 200 to 300 feet in residential, was that based upon looking to see what along our city boundaries where I-15 cuts through, where we have residential that's already coming clear to the fence or close to the fence on the freeway? Is that the motivation for going from 2 to 300?
When we did our research, 300 feet seemed to be what most communities were proposing, or what they're at now. And I think that's also consistent with state law. Is that correct, Sean?
Well, what, in the past, the last billboard changes that were proposed, the big changes, the cities had asked, the Utah League of Cities and Towns had asked for 500 feet. And in negotiating with the sign companies, we came up with a 300 feet compromise, and I still think that's a good compromise. So 300 feet from a residential zone.
So it wasn't something we came up with, it was something that we...
As part of the league, when we were, that
Yeah.
bill did not pass, by the way, but as part of our negotiations, that's what we came up with, was a 300-foot
300.
proposal. We thought that was a good kind of give and take between what we originally wanted and what they requested.
And we did the research. They range between 300 to 500 feet. That seemed to be pretty consistent with what other communities were regulating that distance.
The only issue I see is, what if you have a residential zone and it happens to have a place where it's unbuildable? Maybe it's a hillside. Certainly I-15 cuts through where there's residential zone that we know is 40% slope or greater, or it just has no chance of being developed as residential. It would almost seem that it would be more sensible for it to say 300 feet to any residence if the residential zone is unbuildable. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Because I can just envision there's some place that exists where the residence is obviously going to be 400 or 500 feet away anyway.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that that's something that we could work on with the sign companies. And another good example would be the billboard that Yesco owns that's right behind the building that on 700 South where Brad Lass used to have his home health.
Heritage Home Gardens.
Okay, so that is right on the border of that PD.
It is,
Now,
yeah.
on the digital face headed southbound on that, doesn't affect the residents. In fact, you could argue that digital puts off less light than the parking lot lights do adjacent to it. So
Northbound.
So on that one, you might say, yeah, it's within that 300-foot radius, but it doesn't impact. In fact, probably has less light pollution with that change to a digital. But on the other side, right over the neighbors, and it really is right over the neighbor's backyard and house,
Yeah.
that one you certainly wouldn't want to. So we've already discussed some of this with the sign companies, and maybe we need to put some flexibility there where they can come back and to the council to, in those instances where
make
we
their
think
case.
it won't be an impact. Yeah.
Well, Mayor, do you feel like maybe we should have a little more time to digest this and maybe read through it again?
I think what it makes sense to do is probably any questions we have, great, and have the public hearing. Maybe we could continue the public hearing, and then, we could come back again. Does that make sense, Sean and council? Okay. That way we can, because I know there are representatives here today that might like to make comments. So at this time, unless there are any other comments by Sean or Gary or questions of the council, I'll open the public hearing at this time for any who have come to express any comments regarding item 3E.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and dignified persons. I think that includes everybody.
Wow, I think it includes,
My name is Terry Reed. I have a company called Mammoth Outdoor Advertising. I've been in the outdoor advertising business for, 36 or 37 years. I've been involved in the majority of all the sign ordinances have been written in the state of Utah over that 3 decades. And I've also been heavily involved in legislation at a federal level with the Utah State Federal Act and the federal law. And if I could, I'd like to put a little perspective to what you're talking about tonight.
If you can do it briefly.
I made notes so I can ramble on. I'm not going to ramble
Yeah.
on. So And the perspective is some simple points that address specifically to what the recommendations are. And they are that, in my experience, 24 years ago, I came to St. George and I built my first billboard here. In fact, the first billboard I built on my own. It's now 24 years later, and we have less billboards than we had when I built 3 that took me 2 years to put together. There has been no proliferation of billboards. The community has grown to double its size. So the percentage of signs in relationship to the population has decreased. Signs only exist because businesses want to buy the advertising in them to help build awareness of their business, to develop greater market share so they can buy. Now that's the foreground of it. So it's really not the sign company here. We, in a sense, are trying to protect our clients who buy from us and hopefully grow their business. When the moratorium was passed, as I understand it, it was just to address digital billboards. I'm not sure why an additional restriction was placed on the boards that are already there. But to remove the 500-foot spacing that exists near interchanges continues to make more and more signs non-conforming, which reduces the opportunity for what a landowner and a company that might build a sign can do with the land, because now they're locked into only existing on the 3 square feet or 9 square feet or whatever the sign is. They don't have any flexibility to move at all. I don't think that benefits the city or does anything other than eliminates the opportunity and takes money away from a landowner. I won't go into the specifics, but there's a specific one that you heard tonight where I actually own the sign on the property. And I'd like to be more accommodating, but with an ordinance like that, you couldn't do that because the spacing wouldn't allow you to do it. All of a sudden, it would make it non-conforming. And if you wanted to be accommodating to the situation, you couldn't. When it comes to the digital signs, I don't think that you've looked at them adequately, and you're going to be surprised, I think Sean is. I'm looking at them more like you would look at them. I own some digital signs in another municipality in the Utah County area, and I've dealt with the aspect of why residential people have an objection to a digital sign. It's not the light. And if you measured, as Sean mentioned, there's probably less light, and I'm sure if we went out and did a test that it would be next to that PD zone where Yesco has a sign, because the ambient light around it, because of the parking lot lights, is great, and you're only measuring the distance between, so it won't raise it. But you put it in a place where there's nothing else around, and it's a different thing. But what really is the rotation of the sign has an impact. And I think if you're going to do something with it, you need to measure it from the face of the sign in the direction it's being seen, because if you take 200 feet where the ordinance is now you could put it, and if you adopt, if you adopted at 300, and imagine yourself 200 feet, that's about 2 lots away in a residential area. You walk another 33 paces, and you look back, the perspective's the same. It hasn't addressed the problem that you were trying to address in the beginning about what the impact of the rotation of the advertising sign is. But as Sean mentioned in that one example, a week before you put the moratorium in, I had spoken to Sean about a sign that I have, but I only wanted to put a digital sign on the sign that faces away from residential zones, not the other way, because I think that you're just going to create yourself problems if you do it the other way, and there's no reason to do that. So I think there needs to be some language in it that allows you to have a digital sign, but allows you to make sure that it doesn't impact or it minimizes to a greater extent the impact on residential people rather than just this arbitrary number that comes up from committees trying to come up with things. And I've been, not a delegate, but I've attended many League of Cities and Towns meeting, and that's everybody with an idea trying to come up with a consensus out of their idea. Even if it's not a good idea, they still work towards some kind of a consensus. So I would suggest that as a member of the outdoor advertising industry, that you do not change the spacing for signs that are static, and you leave it exactly like it is, but you change and put the 1,500-foot spacing in for digital signs, and I don't think you're going to come up with it here tonight, but that you have a very short period of time to examine it, because it's not a long, difficult thing to do, and you examine what's the best way to minimize to the greatest extent the impact beyond just the 300-foot spacing that's recommended now. So I would suggest that you act on one, but not on the other until you've had an opportunity to do that. And I'd be happy to share my experience over the last 2 or 3 years in what's happened and how they've been dealt with and how people who've had a problem have become happy again. And that didn't get addressed in really, which was the objective of putting this on a moratorium and waiting to decide what you were going to do with it. And I think you need just a little bit more. I don't think you need more than 30 days, but I think you could study it and resolve all those issues and come up with a much better ordinance that's proposed right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer a question if you got one or not.
Sean, any comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Council? Thank you, Terry. Other comments?
Good evening. Mike Helm with Yesco Outdoor Media. Thanks for your time tonight. I just wanted to get up and say that Yesco supports continuing the public hearing so that we can get together with staff. We've done so already and would really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and go through our concerns in a work session. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Weston Saunders with Saunders Outdoor Advertising. Appreciate your time. Just wanted to stand up and also second that. We support the opportunity to continue discussions and in the spirit of friendly cooperation, draft something that works for everybody.
Okay.
Any questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We've appreciated the chance, I think, to work together with sign companies and both locally and, from other areas up north and so forth. I'll close the public hearing or continue the public hearing at this time.
And Mayor, could I say that there is a letter that in front of you from Snell and Wilmer from Wade Budge, who works for Top Ad and worked for their predecessor as well. Wade's been a great advocate for them, and we've worked with Wade on other billboard issues. So he has this in front of you. I just wanted to make a note of that. And also that Mr. Draper is here from Yesco, and tonight is his 50th wedding anniversary, or 40-something. And rather than be there
doing here
with his
Ray?
wife, he is here on this issue.
All right. You didn't trust us, huh? Tell Debbie it's not our fault. Did we have another? We did have one other letter as well from Insight, I believe. So, all right. So we've continued the public hearing. Sean, is there any other action we can or need to take on this?
Let's just continue that to the public hearing to the 18th so that we have a date certain. And then we'll work with them. If we need additional time, we can address it at that time.
Okay.
I think it's a little tough for an old guy like me to imagine the 500 feet or the 1,500 feet. I think somehow I need to see a sign and they'll say that one's 1,500 feet from there. So visually I can see that, as opposed to in my poor pea brain figuring out how far that really is. I'd like to see us go out and look at some of those examples that they're talking about.
We can do that. We can also tell you what the height of those signs are as well, so you can have some perspective on that.
Personally, I need a lot of guidance on this.
Okay. So we've continued this public hearing to June 18th, which is our next regular meeting. Do we need a motion on that? So, council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Gil. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? We need to have a quick recess.
Good idea.
So we'll do that. Hate to do that, but we've got to do that at this point. Need a quick break. and we'll come back and do the public hearing for the budget. Okay, sorry for the extended recess, but, you know, Gil wanted to play on the tricky bars. So, did you find him? All right. And Jimmy, I think, went up on the roof or something, the back door. All right. Okay, let's see. Gary, are we back to public hearing on the
hearings
budget?
on the budget.
Okay, any comments from you, or should we just open the public hearing?
Just
Okay,
open
I'll open the public hearing for anyone who's come to express any thoughts on the fiscal year 2015, 2016 annual budget, fiscal budget. Anybody have Jeopardy music? Okay. Seeing none, what I'd like to do is continue the public hearing. That way we can, if we want to have a little more discussion or public hearing on the 18th. And also we've got a couple other things we need to do tied to the budget before then. So I'd need a motion, I guess, to do that, right, Gary, to continue. So would someone care to make such a motion?
Motion to continue the public hearing for the budget.
To the 18th?
Yes, to the 18th. That's a good date.
Second.
Okay, motion by Jimmy, second by Michelle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Those poor ladies were doing extra work. They're multitasking. So they got
Tiffany
a lot of
and Deanna,
work.
thanks for being here to listen to all those comments.
All right, the next public hearing is it's just to receive public input on this grant that we're proposing to get a JAG grant for the police department. I don't think we need, I guess we do take action later, so we do need to have a public hearing if anybody wants to make comments on that.
Okay, this is, let's see, this is item 3G. Or 6, yeah, 6C. So I will, at this time, open the public hearing for anyone who has come to have any comments, make any comments on this item, which is the public hearing regarding the 2015 Edward Byrne Memorial Grant, JAG grant for the police department. Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing. And I guess I need to come back to you, council, for your any questions or action, which really goes back to 6, what was it? 6.
C.
C.
So we're just approving them to be able to spend the money, or what?
That's correct. It's kind of one of those things. I was telling someone on the radio, we have to approve it when we accept money. You know?
And they're buying a Razor with it?
Yes.
Who's going to be driving
Well,
that?
we're going to make an application. All you're doing is approving the grant application, and if we get it, then you're approving the match.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Gil, second by Michelle. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yep.
Yeah, we did. It was just quick, Joe, really quick.
Maybe we could take Renee next if we could, Mayor.
Sure.
Mayor, because she's been here all night.
Hi, Renee.
This is just our annual, imposing of that ordinance regarding the watering.
Excellent. I talked about this on the radio, too.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about daytime watering restrictions. It's that time of the year, temperatures are heating up, and we'd really rather have people, if they're going to water at night or during cooler hours rather than the middle of the day. And I would remind you, and the public too, this is those who irrigate with culinary are drinking water that this applies to. And it is not because we feel like irrigation quality water is any less important. It's just that the irrigation system does not have the production and storage capacity to handle getting all of our large irrigators watered in 12 hours. And we feel like it's a better use of our resources to have them water as the water is available, as opposed to putting them on culinary water to try to get it done in 12 hours. So you'll see the university, the golf courses, the parks, their cemeteries watering during the day as they need to, but they're beyond the secondary water system.
Secondary or irrigation, right?
Or irrigation,
Yeah.
and it includes reuse water, so the water that is treated, the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
Otherwise, if we're forced to do it, we can't use it, so it goes down the river.
Right.
No, it's a great asset. And what people don't also realize is sometimes using that water also, even though it's not something we monitor or measure, but it does have the ability to recharge. Not all of it goes into the atmosphere or into the plant. Much of it goes into the soil as well.
Yeah, and it is from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. is when we would like people to irrigate. And, you know, for our culinary system, our peak time is about 6 o'clock in the morning, so if you could irrigate some other time, that would help us manage our peak flows a little bit better.
I'll change my clock.
Thank you.
All right.
And if you're not sure how long you should water, please call the Conservancy District. We run a program for free lawn water audits, lawn water checks, and Julie with the Conservancy District schedules the appointments, and we've got the interns that have been doing this for a few years now. So call Julie and get on the list, and we will give you a customized irrigation schedule to meet the needs of your irrigation system and your lawn.
Not to pat myself on the back, but I did that today.
Good work.
Thank you.
Good work. Any questions?
Will they fix my broken sprinkler head?
Sorry, we are only advisors, not repairers.
You know, it would be interesting, Mayor, to launch some kind of a campaign that would even just ask somebody on their lawn timer. Not all timers are so specific you can do this, but many are. Even if they just took out 1 minute.
Yep.
Just 1 minute. That's 13 gallons per minute going through a 3/4 inch pipe. And it's an amazing thing to calculate over all that we serve and how many valves a house might have and just the amount of water in just one house. And I'll bet you nobody will notice the difference between just 1 minute.
And to Gary's point about sprinklers, if you do need to, or you're interested in making an efficiency improvement, the Conservancy District has outdoor irrigation rebates. And I try not to offer the same rebates as they do because our citizens can take advantage of anything we offer as the city, but also anything the Conservancy District offers. So if you're thinking that you need some upgrades to your irrigation system, give me a call or Julie a call, and we'll make sure you get what you need to know what rebates would apply for that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Then what I would like is a motion that approves the watering restrictions for those irrigating with culinary water, which would mean watering from the time 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Correct.
Motion by Joe.
Second.
Second by Michelle. Any discussion? Did I get it right?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you for moving me up on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I could see you were napping in the back, so. All right, we'll go back to the Planning Commission report. There's a few items that I think we need to take up from the Planning Commission report. Then we'll need to, at some point, adjourn to a redevelopment agency meeting in order to have the public hearing on the redevelopment agency budget.
The next item on the agenda is 6B, report from the Planning Commission meeting held on May 26, 2015. And the first item on the Planning Commission report is to set the public hearing for the June 18, 2015 public hearings. The first one is consider a zone change amendment request to construct a 4-story, 78-unit condominium project on approximately 5.7 acres of property in the PDR zone. The project is Estancia. It is located at approximately 1151 South Plantations Drive. The owner is Capital 5 LLC. The applicant is Mr. David Nazel.
Any questions, council? This is to again set the public hearing to be advertised for June 18th, our next regular council meeting. I'd entertain a motion.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, second by Gil. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, just a personal question on that. Is that another building? They've already got one big building up there now. Is this a second building?
The original approval was for 4 buildings, and so they built the first one. What they're proposing is to remove one of the buildings and only build 3 buildings. The request
Go
is to
higher.
increase the height and increase the footprint a little bit, but it's reduced.
So it's the same project that
Same
was already
project,
approved?
same number of units, just eliminating a building.
Neighbors will be asking me as far.
Yeah, concerned there, yeah.
Okay, item 2 from the Planning Commission report is a request to approve a preliminary plat for a 12-lot residential subdivision with an open space amenity area for the Escapes subdivision called the Escapes Phase 6. Location is Canyon Tree Drive and Arcadian Shore Drive, which is located east of the Ledges Roundabout. Property is 1.91 acres. Density is 6.77 dwelling units per acre. Zone is PDR, which is part of the overall Ledges PD. General plan is LD. Applicant is Development Solutions Group. The representative is Stacy Young here. This one is right here behind Councilwoman Randall. These are the units that they're proposing here. This is a public street here, and this would be a private drive here. And they are creating an amenity area that will not serve the Ledges area, but will serve just the Escapes area, their subdivision.
Any questions, council? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the preliminary plat for the 12-lot residential subdivision known as Escapes Phase 6.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy and a second by Betty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 3 is a request to approve an amended preliminary plat for an 8-lot residential subdivision called Stone Cliff Phase 13. Property is located southeast of Stone Cliff Phase 11 in the intersection of Cobalt and Flint Drive in the Stone Cliff development. Property is 7.47 acres, so the density is 1.07 dwelling units per acre. It is Zone PD as part of the Stone Cliff plan development. The applicant is Traveler Stone Cliff. The representative is Gil Maxwell. Purpose of this amended preliminary plat, which is right here behind Councilwoman Ariel, is to add this lot here. And then originally, these lots were accessing off of this road. However, that's not going to work because this is solid rock here. In fact, in talking to the applicant, they're actually going to cut the face of that rock right there. And so you'll see about a 14-foot cut in the rock that will be along the backside of these lots. And then they will access off of a private drive right up here. These three lots will right here. This private drive, you'll notice there is a little portion of that falls within the ridgeline setback, which is right there. Right there, a little portion of it does. The ordinance says that you can't allow structures or accessory structures to be built in the ridgeline setback or remove significant vegetation. As we looked at it, we felt like there wasn't really significant vegetation, and so staff didn't feel like it was a problem for them to encroach a little bit into that ridge line setback because it'll be kept low and won't impact the visual from below.
Okay. Any questions, council? This is an amended preliminary plat.
Motion to amend the preliminary plat for Stone Cliff Phase 13.
Second.
Motion by Michelle and a second by Jimmy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4A from the Planning Commission report is an approval of an 8-lot residential subdivision final plat called Oakwood Estates Phase 2. Representative is Development Solutions. Property is located at approximately 3,000 east and 3150 south in the Little Valley area. Zone is R110. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff and it meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. Planning Commission recommends approval. This one is right here. The only thing about this one is this lot right here will have to stay designated as a detention basin until such time as the storm drain line over here through the Segmuller property, gets installed, and then that can be vacated and be built as a lot.
Questions, council?
When that no longer is needed as a catch basin, do they have to come back and get approval to build there, or is that all part of what we're doing?
Actually, what they've done is they put this note right here, I believe it's that one on the final plat, that once the storm drain line is in and approved, it automatically vacates the easement that's on the lot itself.
Any other questions? Okay, ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat, Oakwood Estates Phase 2.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Gil. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4B is a request to approve a 13-lot residential subdivision final plat called Tonnequin Heights Phase 2. The representative is Development Solutions. This property is located approximately 1170 West and Chandler Drive. Zone is R140. All aspects of this final plat were carefully reviewed by staff and meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. Planning Commission recommends approval. This one is right here. Again, this is that R140 where they did the cluster development. So the density meets an R140 zone. The lots are smaller. The open space then takes up that. And then you'll notice that within the lots themselves, there are only certain areas that can be disturbed. They actually have a bearing and a distance to each of those so that that can be controlled as far as, you know, this is what you can disturb on your lot.
And will we hold to that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Seems like we've had problems with that in another area.
And I think that's why we asked them to put that bearing and distance on there so that actually it can be surveyed. It's not, you know, some ambiguous line in out there, that it's actually
Okay.
something that can be
Very
surveyed.
good. Questions, council, on this final plat request? Ready for a motion?
I would move that we accept the final plat for Tonnequin Heights Phase 2.
Second.
Motion by Joe, second by Gil. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4C is a request to approve a 6-lot residential subdivision final plat called Tonnequin Terrace Phase 3. Representative is Development Solutions. This is located at approximately 1200 West and 2440 South. Zone is R110. All aspects of this final plat were reviewed by staff, and it meets the conditions of the preliminary plat. Planning Commission recommends approval. I had this backwards.
Yeah, okay, just checking on it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get.
That was the one.
That's the one where the detention basin stays. This is this one right here. So, Tom, I can tell you've caught me.
Couldn't figure that out, but
We were wondering what you're doing over there, Gary. Now we know.
Well, sometimes that thing goes from one.
See, if I go all over the place, then I cover everything.
He's on the wall. Zip code.
So this is Tonnequin Terrace Phase 3. It actually sits right here relative to Tonnequin Heights Phase 2. That LDS church is right there. That's on Tonnequin. And it's just these lots right here.
Any questions? Again, this is a consideration for another final plat for Tonnequin Terrace Phase 3.
Motion to approve the final plat for Tonnequin Terrace Phase 3.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, second by Gil. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Anything else on Planning Commission? All right, looks like other business, huh?
That mean you guys are leaving?
That's why they're leaving.
Thank you.
Save us some pizza. Let's see, Gary, where are we back to?
I think you could go ahead and, I'm not sure if there's, I don't have any items for a closed session, whether Sean does or not. Maybe we could recess that meeting, or however you want to do it, and move into a redevelopment agency meeting.
I'd entertain such a motion.
move that we recess from our regular meeting and convene in our redevelopment agency meeting.
Motion by Gill with a second by Michelle. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Betty. Say aye.
She said aye.
Yeah, she did.
Aye.
Did you say aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right. Getting punchy here.
Okay, the first, or the only item, I guess there's two items. First would be a public hearing to receive any input on the redevelopment agency budgets. I don't think we really discussed it too much in your work meetings regarding the EDAs and the RDAs and the CDAs, but basically, if you might remember, the city has got a redevelopment agency, a neighborhood redevelopment agency that is kind of like the umbrella over all the individual EDAs, CDAs, and RDAs that we have in the city. So this public hearing would be to consider the various EDAs, CDAs, and RDAs we have in the city. Now, we have Fort Pierce number 2, which is the EDA, Economic Development Agency, that was in Fort Pierce where Blue Bunny is located, or was located. So we have a budget for them, which would be $142,000 is what we're requesting for that. You can see it's down from the 2015 budget because obviously we're not getting a full increment from Wells Dairy because of the personal property that was no longer there. We will get the value of the building, but then you've got Economic Development Agency number 1, which is Fort Pierce number 1. This is when the Spectrum had to build a building out in that area, and the Zarnowski, Zarnowski.
Display
Those
company.
are the two basic ones that were in the EDA number, or Fort Pierce EDA number 1, and their total budget is $298,000. Now you see some of that money may go back to the actual taxing entities because we've fulfilled all the obligations for the incentives under that district. But we'll talk about that maybe in the next fiscal year before we actually make any reimbursements or disbursements, I should say. The next one is the CDA, or excuse me, the EDA for Dixie Center. You might recall during the last year we extended this EDA with interlocal agreement with the school district for 6 more years, or until we receive a certain amount of new tax increment for the hotels and some of the other stuff that's going in there. And so that total budget's $376,500 at this point. It may be more because we may end up having to come back and amend that budget once we get the erosion protection program designed and built. And so we'll talk about that in the new fiscal year.
That was the main purpose of that,
Right.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Fort Pierce CDA, number 1, the Family Dollar and the Viracon. So that budget is $1,651,000. You can see the economic incentives are $755,000, and the transfers to other funds are to help us with the obligations we have for the roads and the roads to the airport that we're obligated to, which was part of the use of that money when we set that CDA up. The CDA number 2 is the one we just created this last year, and this is for Environmental Stoneworks and Industrial Brush Company. Their budget's $47,000, which $44,000 is returning some of those personal property taxes and property taxes back to those 2 companies under the agreements we have with them. The last one is the old downtown redevelopment agency that we extended with an agreement with the school district to build Town Square. And this district expires in 12/31/2005, and so we'll be done with that.
15.
In 15, excuse me, yeah, 2015. And so you can see that there's $635,000, which includes $602,000 that we're transferring back to the capital project fund for monies that we advanced the RDA to do the project at Town Square. So that's basically the budgets for for the neighborhood redevelopment agency.
Okay, so we need to have a public hearing for that, correct? So I'll open the public hearing to receive any public input on the fiscal year 2015-16 budget for the Neighborhood Redevelopment Agency, which the city manager just covered in terms of those EDAs, CDAs, and RDAs. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and come back to you, council, for your action, which would be on item number 2 on this agenda, which is to approve the resolution adopting that budget.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year 2015-16.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy and a second by Betty. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, this is a resolution requiring a roll call vote, so we'll start with Joe. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion passes.
I didn't see, was there minutes?
There are some minutes there.
Yes,
Oh,
they are.
okay.
So I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the RDA meeting held December 18th of last year.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Betty, second by Gil. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So now we probably need a motion to adjourn from the RDA meeting and go back into city council.
Second.
Motion by Joe and a close second by Gil. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Does that need to be roll call? Let's do, okay. Any opposed? Okay, so we're back in city council meeting.
Maybe I could just mention that, I know that we set a meeting on July 9th for a work meeting. I guess I arbitrarily wanted to make July 9th a regular meeting, which wouldn't make any difference. You could just take one action item, but we had to advertise for a public hearing on that date, and we didn't know whether you wanted to be meeting on July 2nd because of the holiday on July 4th. So we told them to advertise on the 9th. And so if you meet on the 2nd, that's fine. It doesn't matter. But if we meet on the 9th, we'll have one action item. I think there's only one public hearing, wasn't there?
I know we're going to have a few people out of town, so let's just cancel the meeting on the 2nd, and we can make that work on the 9th. Can't we? Are most of us here on the 9th? I am. Jimmy, you said you were?
It's non-negotiable for me.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, that's right. Now I know.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We appreciate that. We'll go ahead and make that arrangement. So probably have a combination work meeting,
Yep.
regular meeting on the 2nd, but there's probably, I don't anticipate a lot of action on
the 9th.
On the
you mean?
9th.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know about, Dee, could you check with Sean, please, and ask him if he's got any items for a closed meeting? Because I don't have any, so other than minutes, I guess you go ahead.
Too late for him.
Well,
Let's
that's
go
fine. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go to minutes.
I mean, the minutes of April 16th, 2015. Excellent. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Gil, second by Jimmy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Other minutes for the April 30th, 2015 meeting.
So moved.
Move to
That we
approve.
approve them.
Motion by Betty, second by Michelle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Any reports from the council or city manager, city attorney?
I
Any
have
reports?
one.
Okay.
We just received from the FAA the final notice that they've finalized the land exchange after several years. So we'll be bringing that to the city council meeting on the 18th to formally accept their and authorize that agreement. So it's been a long time coming, and it's great to have.
So that will mean we can sell that parcel to the DXATC, as you talked about last week. Fantastic. That's taken a few years.
Almost as long as building the airport.
Yeah. Any other reports? Jimmy, Gil, we were at a meeting. You want to talk about flood control briefly? Either of you?
Gil does.
Gil was the vice chair, so.
Well, it turned out that as you receive grants, similar to what we've talked about here tonight with the police JAG grant, for example, that we have to officially accept them. It was also that same day that over at the Shem reconstructed dam that was built there past the gun lock, or almost a gun lock anyway.
Yeah.
An amazing accomplishment, but not possible without the NRCS funding. And their representative was here, which I thought was pretty cool. And it was nice because they're one of the groups that I think Gary would agree, and Deanna's done a ton of work with them, that they were pretty interested in helping us repair and mend and look for future problems and solve them. So it was a good long meeting in which we covered a lot of areas. And we also reorganized which controlled debris basins we were going to pay attention to as far as priority lists go, and we're able to fund for $587,000, wasn't that it? That it was the Stookie Basin, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good meeting and held last Tuesday. It was good.
Jimmy, we had the NRCS there as well from up north, and they talked about a couple numbers. Can you?
Yeah, and the
just
mayor and I
trying
were
to
trying to remember, we said we were going to remember this, but it was something like 2 million tons of
rock.
2 million tons
Gil
of
remember.
rock were moved, and
For how many miles? Was it 20 miles or something?
yeah.
And then in terms of the money, they put in 75 million, and our match as a community, as a county, was about 25 million. That, of course, isn't all dollars. But value. Yeah, it was rock. It was
machinery.
Yeah,
Labor.
So $100 million, but 75 million coming from really the federal government. We could not have done that.
Right.
It's one of those things that you do need the federal government for those kinds of catastrophic things, and we're grateful for Deanna and Gary and others who worked through that with the NRCS and others.
Yep.
Our engineers.
We're almost done, aren't we, Dave?
Yeah.
We got one little project. We got to.
Yeah, that's what.
And that's what they were saying.
So what they were saying, we're really close.
Yeah.
After 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow. So anyway.
Well, it's interesting because if we wouldn't have had what was done between 2005 and 2010, we would have had another
Yes.
worse situation
Catastrophic.
after what we had in 2010 because what we put in earlier helped us so much.
And that's what's fun about that, being on that board, is it's a multi-community effort, and everybody's working together to make sure we take care of those potential flooding issues, and it's been good.
In fact, there was some interesting discussion in terms of where it looks like that group is going to soon be an owner of property.
Yep.
Own property. Basically,
Flood basins.
flood basins. And we probably are going to need to hire an attorney part-time. Right now, it's one of the county attorneys, who was it, Trevor, that was there? Is it Trevor?
Yeah, Brian, yeah, something like that.
Anyway, but it's kind of like some of these other districts and so forth. We probably are going to have to kind of legitimize it a little bit more with some of those things, get insurance, liability coverage. Right. Anyway, so it's sort
developing, but it's
developing, yeah.
And into a properly structured body.
Yep.
As it's moving, maturing.
Any other reports? Okay. All right. Do we have need of a closed session, Sean? City manager said he didn't. Then I'd entertain a motion, I believe, now to adjourn.
So
Motion to
moved.
adjourn. Second.
Motion by Gil, second by Jimmy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.